in mind for him, and God has someone in mind for you. And I know this isn't necessarily popular. A lot of times you hear people preach differently than this, but I have a real problem with that preaching because we tend to believe that there is a perfect will of God for everything in our lives except for this. Right? There's a perfect will of God for the church you're supposed to be in. There's a perfect will of God for the calling you're supposed to be in. There's a perfect will of God for the city you're supposed to be in. There's a perfect will of God for all these things, for the job you're supposed to have. But when it comes to the most important decision that you'll have on this earth, outside of following Jesus, well, that's up to you. You don't get to choose your spouse, not like that. Ooh. Just no more than you get to choose your pastor. No more than you get to choose what you're called to do. No more than, now you can choose to go against God's plan, but if you want God's best, God has someone in mind. Well, Pastor, people have free will. In this story, he said if she's not willing to come. Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true. God can have somebody in mind for you, and you could be the person he has in mind for them, and they could choose to say no. People do it before they marry. They do it after they marry. Just decide to backslide and say, you know what, I don't want God's plan for my life anymore, for whatever reason. Do you think that surprises God? Do you think God was like, oops, I didn't plan for that? Come on, when you're driving your car and maybe Siri is trying to help you go somewhere, right? And so you're trying to get, let's just say you're trying to get to Texas. And you're following directions that Siri's giving you, and you make a wrong turn, and you go, you know how it is when you make a wrong turn on those roads, you go 5 miles out the way. What does Siri do? Correcting, right? Siri just tells you, okay, here's a different way to get to this result. This was the original way, but here's a different way. But I'm still going to get you to your destination. Well, God has all of this figured out. So if somebody decides, well, that may be God's best for me, but I don't want that for whatever reason, God's not surprised. He's like, all right, well, I got somebody else that fits just fine.